to order. That we can talk about that business a little bit later. I can't speak yet, but I wanted to welcome a new member of the OER staff, Joshua Ravello. And he is our OER Commission assistant. So he will be reaching out to you guys, and sharing meeting materials and all that kind of stuff as things go forward. He'll also be taking meeting minutes today, or actually have an official meeting minute taker. And you met Patrick last time, right? He's our communications manager, Kim Sparlin, deputy, myself, and we have another guest today. And that is Andrew Oki, and he's with the Islander Institute. And will be working with us to facilitate meetings throughout 2023. Yay. All right. So first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the meeting held on January 26th. So sincerely, welcome edits. I did a lot of this myself. And because the recording had a lot of feedback, it was hard to double check the meeting minutes, with our official recording. And hi, Deb and Melly. Hi. Thanks for joining us.
I move to approve the minutes. Second.
All right. So meeting minutes have been approved. And now I'm gonna, what's that?
Okay.
Yep, sorry.
I don't know if we're doing that. I was told like no Robert's rules things, but.
Those are
Covered
really
one,
the
good.
Robert's rules, so that's just general conducting the meeting. So for the member intros and getting started, I'm gonna hand it over to Andrew.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I know many of you. Great to be here. Just thanks for having me part of this. So I think everybody got to meet each other more or less at the first meeting. But what we wanted to do was we sent out some information ahead of time, and I hope everybody got a chance to kind of read through everybody's responses. If not, you can try and cram that because it's in front of you on this handout. And I wanted to highlight, not that I wanted to, hey, great. Not that I wanted to put Keone on the spot, but it's not beneath me to do that. Because I wanted to share one part of his answer, which was that I want to engage in dialogue with other commissioners to hear their perspectives, learn from them, and build enough trust and respect with each other to challenge each other's ideas to find common ground. The commission is diverse in perspectives, so if we can come together to find common ground on a path forward for Honolulu's economy, then we will be seeding a very powerful idea and movement for change. So I don't know if you saw the answer sheet or what, if you cheated, but that is exactly actually what we're hoping to be able to step in. There's not that many meetings. And I think you cannot trust that you're part of this commission for a good reason. And that everyone's obviously qualified and has something to contribute. And it is a diverse group. But in this short time we have together, we do want to try and really get to know where each other's coming from as much as possible in a short amount of time, so that we can come up with some sort of shared statements by the end. So what I wanted to do was give each of you a chance to talk, to open up this meeting. And I wanted to give, or to ask you to, if you've read through these or sort of at least skimmed through them, kind of your reactions, either to the question of what is your definition of a good job, or to the answers to how people want to contribute to the commission. And I was hoping everybody would share. So and we won't go around with this. Whenever you're moved to talk, you can volunteer, but I'm hoping to hear from all 9 of you. sort of any feedback.
Do you have more handouts?
Oh, yeah. You know what we have, I do not, an extra one. I have an extra one.
Thanks.
I know you read it all last time. You're thorough in that way.
Oh, great. How's it going? I haven't seen Andrew in 20 years, I think.
Yeah.
He looks the same.
Being recorded. so.
What was your last memory of it?
That was
Called
not the
3 Point
question.
Consulting.
Okay, if you read through that, if you haven't read it. So yeah, anybody can go. Just your thoughts, sort of what stuck with you as you read through that.
Well, what sticks with me is that mine were like, I think by far the briefest, and I think I misinterpreted the definition of good job. I thought a good job for us is commissioners. And I think reading other answers, it's like, no, what is a good job in the city and county of Honolulu? Perhaps in my haste, I misread that.
Did that resonate with you, what you read in any particular way?
Well, everything sounds good. I just answered the wrong question is kind of my initial feedback.
Okay. Others, including you on the call.
One thing I noticed was that almost all of us said something about work-life balance, quality of life, time with family and friends. And I think that that resonates because a lot of us realize that the cost of living here makes it hard for us to have enough time to pursue interests and do things that are important to us personally. And so I think that that's kind of a common theme. So I hope we can, keep that in mind as we progress through the commission, and develop the strategy is just that should be first and foremost in the back of our minds.
Thank you.
And I think related to what you said, I think like for me too, being kind has become more and more important to me over the years. And so a lot of places I've seen a little bit like toxic relationships and stuff. And it doesn't matter if these other things are in place, like we can't be kind to each other. It's really important. I think there's a function that government plays with that as well.
I'll kind of chime in a little bit. I mean, coming from a small business owner perspective, as far as what is a job and, our segment of employment tends to be sort of the younger generation. I mean, surprisingly, we hold our employees for a long time just because, in a cafe, it's really that part-time job that allows you to, make a little money and flexible with your school. And that tends to be our employees most of the time. But I do find, I think from their perspective and why we were able to hold a lot of employees until they're literally ready to go to graduate school or they finish college is really just having a really nice environment that they can come into. They can do their job. They enjoy the people around them. They have a little bit of say in, we allow them to be vocal about what works, what doesn't. And we try to put them in places where they're going to be successful. There's no point in putting someone in, that they're just, you put them in the back of the house and they hate it. They, whatever that doesn't do anybody any good, doesn't do the team any good, doesn't do them any good. So we try to place people where their strengths lie. And so I feel that, and I'm coming from a very small business perspective and we have that affordability. But one of my thoughts was, okay, a good job is, to try to decide what a good job is or, what's the ideal job. But at the same time, too, we have to have a good business climate for the businesses to be successful to provide the good jobs. And, I'm hoping in this, commission that, we address, what is our current business climate? for small businesses, for people to create the jobs for for everyone. And another thought I had in that same vein would be like, it would be interesting to see where are all the jobs coming from, like from, I don't know what kind of statistics there would be, but is it, hospitality, retail, government? Where are all those jobs coming from? And what businesses make up our economy that's providing the jobs? And what is the statistics on that? And, that might be part of identifying, how do we help, seeing where everything is now and, where, I mean, like, I think I agree government plays a role in this, but it's like, how do we create a business climate that allows businesses to succeed, to provide the jobs that a good job, basically. So that's sort of my general thought on things coming from a small business perspective.
Right on. Thank you, Deb. Others?
I think Deb's idea of that word perspective was really important, and I thought as I was just skimming through these, the idea that everybody had a different perspective of what that question was trying to get, is the same way that people think about it in the economy. And the fact that people view what a good job is from different perspectives illustrates the fact that jobs and the economy is a system, and it can't be viewed from you can't work on what's a good job from any singular perspective. And oftentimes, as we all know, the different perspectives can either complement each other or they can sometimes conflict with each other. And I think recognizing that there's a balance that's required for a system to work effectively is maybe a key thing for us to acknowledge in identifying strategies to address a system.
I'll take the perspective one step back and go back to education, because I'll use my wife as an example. She's a high school teacher, and she tells me all the time, her senior class, they're so conflicted, whether to go to college, to go get a job to help pay for college, sometimes go get a job to help pay for their family expenses. And a lot of it really depends on what class you're in, or what the class your family's in, how you need to contribute to that. And oftentimes the good job perspective for a 17 or 18 years old individual depends on what they have, what responsibility they have, right? And some that have to provide for their family, their idea of a good job is just something that can pay the bill for right now, versus I come from a well-to-do family. My good job will happen after I go to college or grad school, and then I can pick and choose where my life is going to go. So sometimes it's dictated by economics and education, and where you land in that spectrum. So I don't know how to quite fix that problem, but I can see it from my wife's perspective on these kids coming out of school. Already their lives are already kind of pushed in one direction, and they're kind of forced to make that decision.
Like I said, responsibility.
Yeah.
LA was trying to say something.
What was that?
Melly wanted to say
Oh,
something.
okay, Melly, go for it.
She should probably know that we can't hear her.
Oh. Yeah, you're on mute. Oh, that's why you're on mute. Yeah, Melly.
Looks like she's talking.
Try it out.
Oh, weird.
It does look like she's talking. Okay, I'm still muted. Okay, let's come back.
Just to come back.
County, great.
I guess I'll chime in. As I was thinking, it was a good question, And my impulse was to answer the question, but then I thought more about it. I said, it's probably not a relevant question because there's no one definition. So we can't just pick a definition and go with it. It's good to think about so that as we do our work, we know what people are looking for in the community. Because if we create industry that doesn't match what people want to do, like high growth companies never made it here. And it made me pause and think, why didn't it happen? Because like Owen and I were trying to do that for 20 years, nothing really. And it's because it doesn't fit our values and our culture. People don't, number one, want to work that hard. I mean, and that's not a bad thing. We want to be a family and have time for quality of life. But if you want to make money, you don't live in Hawaii. You know, you might as well live on the mainland, right? So it didn't fit our culture and our values. So that's one thing that occurred to me the last couple years. And so I've been putting a lot more support behind small business, which I think can fit better what we want to do. And then I was thinking about our work, you know, I like to be kind of focused on objectives. So okay, why are we asking the question, you know? And then I was thinking, well, I guess I would look at it from the commission standpoint, you know, what is the work that we're doing? Well, if we can help create jobs in industry, then somebody hopefully will want the job. I mean, we can't tailor every job to every person, possible. And so as we think about industry that wants to, that matches Hawaii, hopefully it matches macroly. We can't look at it from a micromanagement standpoint, just a big picture. I think hospitality is a good example where it's an industry that fits a lot of needs. You know, you got the 9 to 5 people that want to go home, then you have the workaholics that can stay there all the time. So it's great to have an industry that gives multiple choices, I think, to what kind of job that, you know, you can get. The problem with high growth companies is there's no 9 to 5 job. It's 24/7 for 5 years, 7 days a week, as Olin can attest to when he was with Chipin. So it's like all in for years. You have no life, you know. So why would Hawaii people want that? Doesn't really, you know. We were like VCs would come and say, "Oh, Hawaii people are lazy. You know, they're not working hard enough." And you know, I remember Dustin Shindo said he did Hoku Scientific. He said, "Hey, I'm the only one working on the weekend in Middle Innovation Center." I think there's a reason for that. So it would be smart to look at the reason. So, so then I thought, well, maybe, you know, our mission is job creation, you know, because of the question. It makes me think maybe and so how do we go about creating jobs? What jobs? You know, we can't really say if it's going to be considered good for people. Hopefully, if it makes enough money and they can have a good life, it's a regular hours kind of thing. More money for regular hours, I think that's probably good for most people. And also doing something that feeds your soul, you know, maybe that's hard because it's hard, but you know, maybe at least it doesn't take away from your soul, you know, like polluting the land, right? That I think no one can really feel good about that kind of job. But there are jobs like that where you're paid to permit people to pollute. It's like, look, they're called lawyers. Some of those people. So, you know, those people have not necessarily real happy lives. Well, some of them don't care. Yes, you know, they're fine because they're carrying out the law. So, and then once we think about industry we want to work on, then my question is, how do we make that happen? What can we do about it? And there's different strategies to how to make that happen. So, I think, you know, one strategy is to just create the environment for things to flourish and just stay out of the way. You know, that's one strategy. But the other end of the spectrum is you pick an industry and you decide that you can make that industry work. And I think that generally doesn't work because government's not good at business stuff, but it's good at infrastructure. So, you know, like the film industry, you can create a studio, right? That's infrastructure. You don't make the businesses happen, but you create the opportunity. And education is important too, because we also want to invest in the kids so that when they grow up and they're at that point, they can become entrepreneurial. They can feel like they can do anything. I think they can, and still that. So there's a lot of, but then we only meet 4 times a year. So what's realistic? But anyway, those are my initial thoughts.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks. So Melly's still working. Yeah. Still can I hear you? Shoni.
Just a reflection on the reflections of the
We're all chosen because of our successes and our abilities to succeed in the current system. And looking at all of our responses, just want to name a reflection for me is like we're all very privileged. And we're all speaking about this from a place of privilege. And the question I have is, who are we going to center in this work? Is it people like us who are doing fine? Or is it
a lot of the people in our communities, our family and our friends who are living on the thinnest of margins, where we're become accustomed to seeing friends and family move away and choose to live elsewhere because they have a better opportunity for a better quality of life. That's the kind of stuff that I think regardless whether you're liberal or conservative or what spectrum you're on in politics, there are some universal things that we can agree to about what we want to see as a society and make that the algorithm for the economic strategy that we want to pursue. Because right now, the algorithm of our economy and our society is profit maximization at nearly any cost. And we see what those costs are, right? We have to be honest about that. You know, many of us are trained in economics and in business, right? And that's what you see. It externalizes people, it externalizes natural environment and resources. And that's why we, as a species on this planet, are now facing our own self-created extinction, or accelerating it at least, right? And so if the algorithm of profit maximization at all costs is getting us and creating the outcomes that I think we can all agree we don't want to see, then what is the new algorithm that we want to pursue and inject into the operating system of our economy? And I think if we, as folks of privilege, only speak about it from our perspective, we run the risk of repeating the same mistake. And so I know we only get to meet 4 times a year. I know it's hard for us to meet, but figuring out a way for us, all of us, me included, and Oli included. Oli grew up not wealthy, right? Right? I mean, you share that story all the time, and you know, like it. So when we talk about a good job, man, I want to hear it from people who are suffering the most in our economy, who we want to be here, right? Longtime local families, Native families.
If I can interject and, you know, you made me think about my 8-year-old self. Like when my mom got a job at Zippy's, I thought we won the jackpot. And it was the best job in the world. Like we could get food and pay for stuff. And so my nephew, I was talking to him last year, his dream job was working at the post office and he got it. Like, he's so stoked. But you're right, absolutely.
I don't know if we're all so privileged. That's kind of an assumption. So we should learn more about each other first. And we didn't grow up rich. I mean, I wasn't in Kalihi, but you know, my dad was an engineer and had 4 kids in private school. So we worked really hard to try to, you know, I remember I was on scholarship in school and had to work in the bookstore. And, you know, some people felt that was a stigma, but, you know, I felt lucky, you know. I went from Manoa school to Punahou and I was like, whoa, this is crazy, you know. So I always appreciated Punahou because of my initial start in public school. But I agree completely with you, which is why I say we're not creating jobs just to make money. We're creating jobs that fit the values and culture of the people. And, you know, I think one of our secret sauces is the fact that people don't need to get as rich here as other places. So there are industries that could work here that wouldn't necessarily work on the mainland. I had a VC friend, a lawyer became VC, Craig Johnson. He started a fund because he thought the VCs were missing the boat because they were too much in a rush to go public. So his fund funded companies that took at least 10 years to have an exit. So he saw a gap. You know, I think Hawaii can fill a gap with that. The fact that people want to have a balanced life and they don't want to spend all their time working and they want to do good stuff. But you're right, we should, you know, find out more about them. But, you know, at some point, the commission has to make an assumption, some kind. We can't necessarily understand everyone's situations, but I guess that's hopefully all of our jobs is to bring those situations here. But
Anybody else want to add anything more? I think we lost Melly. Maybe she can comment.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I don't want to necessarily contradict anything that was said, but I don't think that people in Hawaii don't want to work. I think that we're the hardest working people. I mean, most people I know have 3 jobs, including myself. I have multiple things that I try to do because I'm a single mom, and it's hard to live here as a single mom. So I think people are trying to work hard here. I've worked in Silicon Valley as you have, and those people don't necessarily work 7 days a week, 80 hours a week. They spend a lot of time doing other things. So I don't know. I think it's good that we have this perspective, and I think that we are, some of us do come from a privileged perspective, maybe not in our roots, but maybe now. And so I think it's something that we definitely need to consider. One thing I did say in my statement was that I felt like we needed to have more public input in this process. So if there's a way to include more public input opportunities, I think that you're absolutely right. We need that because we can't solve all of these problems. We don't even know what all the problems are. But I think that this is a really good dialogue. I'm really glad we're having it because there's so many different perspectives, like we said. And so I'm excited for this. And this is really helpful and really gonna do something great personally.
I think you brings up a really good point for future commission turnover in terms of membership and representation and maybe across the socioeconomic spectrum. I don't know how we've done that with this first selection, but it's something maybe to consider.
So, yeah, that's exactly what I was hoping would happen in the intros, which is like bringing people in, like your wife and people who aren't here, and sort of, making sure like starting to wrestle with the language. We're not going to iron it out in the next 5 minutes, but it's a lot of progress in just a 10-minute sharing or 15-minute sharing. So I want to like keep the agenda moving, but just to again go back to what Keone shared, like the goal is to be able to come together and make some joint statements together as a whole. And the time is limited. So yeah, the more you can bring in your perspectives, your honest views, even if it might feel like it's contradicting somebody else or whatever, I really encourage that. I love that dialogue. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna kind of give an overview of what today is about. And I'm gonna hand it back to you.
I need you to share there we go. Deb, can you see the presentation?
No. Where would I see that?
Hold on. Patrick's gonna put it.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Thanks. Oh, you can go back to the next slide. So, all right, 12 minutes or less. I'll try to keep it.
Hang on 1 second. Aren't you gonna give an overview of the process first?
Yes.
You and
Kim could.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to do it, Kim?
Yeah, sure. No, I'm happy to
Yep.
do that. And I just, before we do that, I just want to say thank you for being so open and so, candid. That's hard to do in a group setting so early on, and it was, I'm honored to be a part of this conversation in this group, and I just want to say thank you. And it's exactly why we asked you all to be a part of this group. And equity is definitely a big component of what we're trying to do. So appreciate that. But that's neither here nor there. So you just a big reminder, today we're here to learn a little bit more about each other and about why we're here and start to get some kind of common understanding. And yes, like Andrew said, we need that discourse. We need those different perspectives. We don't want a whole bunch of yes people. And so really today is about understanding our role and what the work's going to be ahead through the rest of 2023. And then you'll have homework, as Amy has already warned you. So you'll have some homework to do, and hopefully we can divide and conquer some of that heading into the April meeting, at which time we'll start to look at what the landscape is, get a shared understanding of what that landscape is, get a common vernacular. I think sometimes, we speak in the same words, but they have different meanings. So it's really important to make sure that we have a common vernacular. And then identify any gaps that are out there. Are there gaps that we need to go after? Where are some of the strengths of what's already being done that we can highlight and amplify and not duplicate? And then in July, really kind of come back with some ideas of, what we want to do, in the year ahead, meaning the following year, so that we can have some kind of plan. Doesn't necessarily need to be a strategic plan. I think we heard from several of you that you not really interested in writing strategic plans. It's going to sit on sit on a, shelf. There's a lot of them that are out there that we can build off of. And so, really kind of deciding in July what direction we're gonna go, what those partnerships are gonna be, what different policies, if anything, we want to look into. And then in October, kind of give the blessing, right? So that we can report that out to the council by the end of the calendar year. So a lot of work to be done, but we think that we can definitely get through it. Any questions on what's ahead? Just kind of a reminder to level set everybody where we are and where we're going.
Thanks, Kim. I think the goal for today, since the main instrument, the new instrument is OER. That's like a new city tool, basically in economic development, economic planning. So our hope for today was really that you would walk away knowing everything you wanted to and didn't want to know about OER. Sort of what is this instrument? And we talked about what government can do, can't do, or whatever. Trying to understand what this thing is, its history, its philosophy, what it can do, its resources, etc. So as we move into that presentation, as you're listening to it, I want you to think about questions. If something doesn't make sense or whatever, we're going to really go through it today so that you really feel like you have a good understanding of what's happened and what can happen with this organization. Okay? Okay. Okay, Deb? That sounds good?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Amy.
Okay, so yeah, to be clear, for this presentation, I'm just going to talk about, we're talking about understand OER, where it came from, what it has done, and why OER is doing the work that you have been able to do thus far. And so for some people, it may be repetitive because you've worked with us. Eliza, for example, was on the council when we got started. So, she didn't tell her boss to vote against the incorporation of.
So you know.
Oh, well. That would be a karmic coincidence. Just kidding. All right, so this is basically, some of the things that we've been talking about in our office with our team, as the city's newest office. We were organized in the midst of the pandemic, and we were supposed to provide, information and push resources out to the public. That's what we were stood up to do. And we were over there in the Blaisdell Center on folding tables with a laptop. That was it. And figure out who you need to hire, figure out what you need to do. Amy, maybe you guys should have a job fair. It's like a job fair in the pandemic. Okay, so what we're trying to do is to plant the seeds now of this post-COVID economy so that it will be more equitable, more diverse, and better able to provide those good jobs. So next slide. So these are what I hope you can gather as takeaways from today. When you think about what OER is doing, we're focused on always engaging or being with community on this journey. We're focused on equity as a principle of our work, whether it be programs, policies, or how we interact with each other in our office. And then finally, good jobs. And so if I could just start real quickly with these here, community is kind of where we get our legitimacy, right? That there was a need established during the pandemic, and the whole goal of OER was to try to be responsive to that need in the community for information about the pandemic, for resources. How do I do anything? So we had an 11-person call center team at that time and the One Oahu website. And that was how the city received and pushed out information. We got more than 3 million hits on that website, something like that. It was insane. So not only was it providing resources and outreach to residents, but as people started to come back to our place, it was a resource for how do you come into our place and respect people here, right? So with this outreach, that focus continues to be how we can listen, how we can learn, and then adapt. So that's why I think it's so exciting that we're starting this work with the commission, that adaptability and another source of community input with all you folks being involved. So with community too, Kim had made a face at me for lot when I was saying this, but we don't need to be the source or originators of new ideas. There's a lot of stuff going on out there that if there's momentum, we're just trying to look at it as where can we, bring the government, city government shoulder to the wheel and help it turn. We want to fill gaps. We definitely do not want to duplicate where other people are already doing this work. And so this kind of, turns into how did we develop who is in our office, what people are doing in our office. But that kind of feedback around projects and programs and areas we should be focused turned into where we have program managers. And those are in the areas of small business and finance, workforce development, regenerative tourism, sustainable ag and food systems, still on this slide, and innovation and technology. So moving on to equity quickly, you can keep it there, Patrick. We're looking at all sorts of things, including language, culture, geography, in terms of an equitable approach. And we don't know what we're doing. We're trying to figure it out. There's no model in the city. I don't think anyone is doing it really well right now. And so we just want to continue to provide funding for training and entrepreneurship and other activities. So we have more people participating in figuring this out with us. Hoping that ultimately this equity approach also helps us to become less dependent on the hospitality sector and have a more diversified economy. There's nothing wrong with a job in hospitality. It's not that it's not a good job, as Greg described. There's all sorts of job in that sector, but we realized during the pandemic that they were not shock-proof jobs. Us and Las Vegas, we lost the most jobs in all the country. So having that learning in our back pocket, what could we do to help people participate in jobs that help them better take care of each other here and our place for future generations? And then finally, you've heard us talk about good jobs a little bit, but this is where all of our programs and policies thus far point back to the good job strategy. So I'll talk about that at the end. So next slide, Patrick. So this is just part of the slides that we share sometimes when we talk to the city council. And you've seen an update from our business and constituent educator team. There's 5 individuals. I think the previous mayor said, I don't know, Amy, do something like Aloha ambassadors, just get people out there. So we're like, and do what? Well, tell people what they're not supposed to do. And like, wait, what? So, and then, okay, well, educate. So we came up with something from a city job description that we're sending people out there now. So this kind of emerged alongside the 11-person call center. We were going to have 5 people go out and hit the streets basically for most of their time. At that time, obviously, they had to be masked and protected, but we stood up a program called Back on the Wave, and over 2,700 businesses interacted with us on a CDC protocol, would you call it, Patrick? Protocol that they could walk through to understand for those storefront businesses how best to protect their staff, customers, and stay open. And also, if they did walk through the protocols, there was a UHero survey on the back asking them, how did you stay open and all these things. So this was one of our first forays into working with UHero, but they also got a $300 assortment of PPE and hand sanitizer and some logo gear that they could put on the ground and show people where to step and stuff like that. But this team of 5, actually it's usually 4 people that are out on the street, as of today have met with more than 3,000 businesses in person. No one else is doing that in the city. No one else is literally walking out there, walking into Olu's diaper living room and asking, what's going on? What are your top issues? And how could we help with the city? So we have a lot of partners who do this with us. And this team has 2 webinars a month where we're really just partnering with other organizations that have the programs, that have the information, and making sure it's getting out there. So we love doing that. And we have really strong partnerships with like the Small Business Administration, the Chamber executing a program with us as we speak, as well as Greg asked about this with some of the co-working organizations. They've done a number of webinars and other work with us. So that's kind of our community focus. Next is equity focus. I've got a couple slides on that. So these are 3 areas where we're practicing our equity focus. We've done ag grants for small farmers, and it's $3 million of COVID relief funds that we had heard over and over and over, farmers will not apply for government assistance. They don't like the government, they don't do loans, they don't do grants, it's too much hassle, they're just trying to do their thing, right? Keone, sorry. You're like, don't say that. This is one of his big areas. But we knew like we were going to have to do more to get them to participate with us. So we started with a round of just informational webinars and in-person meetings with anyone who would host us, including like a council member or a Hawaii Farm Bureau or Hawaii Farmers United, and went out and told them, you know, here's what you have to do to become a vendor with the city. And then after that, we got some funding from the Ulupono Initiative to help us do outreach in various languages. The city, just so you understand some of our limitations, felt that doing outreach in different languages potentially created a liability. As Greg commented on lawyers getting involved. Yes, they said, don't do that. You know, we can't take an application in Laotian, you know, we can't read it. And so with the support, as we always try to do, try to leverage our funding with others who see the mission similarly. And they give us $65,000. We didn't spend it all, of course, but we did more than 9 outreach events, had 127 applications come in every language from, let me make sure I get this right. We got our first application in the Hawaiian language, so that was awesome. But we also got Samoan, Tongan, Ilocano, Lao, Thai, and Cantonese farmers that all submitted applications. So I wouldn't like check the box of success, but we're learning. And we know that there's partners out there who want to help us reach these farmers. And the fact that we got some farmers to like submit an application to the city government was a huge win. So we're going to try to build on that. And that's exactly like what our Pacific Islander Community Liaison is also doing. We know that that community was one of the hardest hit economically and health-wise by the pandemic. And so the mayor at the time said, you guys got to do something, and here, plop this person in this new office. And so we said, all right, how, you know, what is this work that we can do together? And so again, she's spending more than half of her time out in the community, meeting with regular groups of Pacific Islanders that gather. That means a lot of church meetings, right? That's one of the places where it's easiest to reach the most people. There's a couple nonprofits now that have, you know, gained some traction due to the pandemic. But what she's learning has resulted in our first grant to that community in particular. And it was established by a council member, but it was to provide death benefits for people who are living here from the compact nations, who are excluded from eligibility for death benefits due to COVID. So this is another little equity approach that we're working our way through procurement right now, and we're going to see how it works. We're going to attempt to learn something. And finally, Good Jobs Oahu. We previously called it Oahu Back to Work, but this will be the 3rd time we roll out this program. So this will be a total of 10 million put into workforce development on Oahu. And our partner is the University of Hawaii, but like them in their Good Jobs Challenge funding that you may or may not be aware of, we're shifting towards an emphasis on jobs with starting salaries above $18. We're trying to enhance the wraparound services because we kind of feel like people are going to be very reluctant to do any kind of training when likely we're targeting people who need a job for the income in their household. And then finally, just creating more robust employer connections. So the university and the city are contributing, as well as the chamber, to very specific partnerships in the areas of education. And these are what we think we've proposed are more shock-proof sectors: education, healthcare, technology, clean energy, skilled trades, creative industries, For the city, we also are hoping we can get a few folks hired and working here, although some jobs are below 18 bucks an hour, so. There's that, and then sustainable ag and food systems, which isn't one that the university has
You say
identified.
there's
but we
jobs
have.
at the city that pay under $18 an hour.
Yes. Yeah. All right, onward, next slide. I'm gonna try to stay to my 12 minutes. So National League of Cities, this was something that also came up in some of our discussions with you so far. We think there's a lot of opportunity for us to learn from others, and we don't have to go this alone. So Kim and the kind of lead among our business and constituent educators was given the opportunity to participate in a cohort of other cities at the National League of Cities on inclusive entrepreneurship. So we're learning on 2 tracks. One is to help map business resources on Oahu. Does that mean anything to you guys? So organizations, whether they be nonprofit or for-profit, those that help small businesses with, I don't know, legal advice, startup, et cetera. And then finally, to take some of that information, enhance our ability to capture data and devise analytics from that so we can develop strategies to support those most marginalized and disadvantaged small businesses on Oahu. I also wanted to mention, just for extra, I was a part of 2 cohorts, a National Association of Counties Equitable Economic Recovery that we have since closed that cohort. That was with 7 other counties around the country. And I just finished a certificate program with the Bloomberg Harvard City Innovation Institute. And our professor, Mitch Weiss at Harvard, said basically the focus here is possibility government versus probability government. So it's all focused on a human-centered innovation mindset, trying to develop that here in the city. So there were 7 other departments that participated with me on that, and it was really amazing learning opportunity. Our ag team is also in 2 fellowships, a Rockefeller fellowship, and the other one is, I wrote it down because I wasn't going to remember, a mentorship program by the Wallace Center at Winrock International. So we think there's a lot to learn and bring from what we're doing on the community side, but also there's other people out there, right, that are doing this work and have experimented. Maybe there's something we can learn there. Next slide, equity and good jobs. I just wanted to point out that we've just started this work with UH. They are the lead on the broadband strategy for the state. There is a potential of $400 million plus coming to the state, and they need the county's support to execute this. Our work, whether it be challenging some of the FCC fabric that they established in terms of a accessible enough internet speed connection on various points on our island, to do have our providers given us good information. And that map is potentially somewhere that our data and maybe even a new intern team will spend their time analyzing to help develop a really strong plan. Because we know, again, from pandemic experience, that connection is vital for education, for healthcare, for our jobs, for creating new business, et cetera. So this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for Hawaii. Next slide. So our good job strategy, some of you guys said these words. We want to be in these areas, preserving good jobs, creating good jobs, and helping people get good jobs. All of our programs and policies thus far point back to working in one of these areas. So right now we're working with the Chamber on Oahu Business Recovery Grants. This is kind of our last COVID pandemic relief, but in that we hope to help preserve some good jobs that are out there. Creating good jobs, we're looking at sector-specific support, as I mentioned, in those areas, education, healthcare, technology, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally, helping people to get a good job is, the deployment of not just UH training, but others like Purple Maya that we've attempted to work with for some, whether it be specific technology training, or in the case of skilled trades, the carpenter's pre-apprenticeship program was funded through our Good Jobs program. And we hope to just build out so there's more possibility and that in the end, employer connection, right? And then the last slide is our think piece. So our team has been thinking about this, I don't know if it's been a year yet, but more recently, the Aspen Institute and the Families and Workers Fund has a team, the Good Jobs Champions, that has been working on this definition of a good job. And it kind of resonates with our team. And the thing I'm appreciative of this, some of our team at OER got hung up on, well, if there's a good job and we want people for, to have one, there must be a bad job out there too. And what if the jobs in ag are bad jobs? Is the work I'm doing not important? And so what I think this is helping with is that one of OER's goals is that there is an opportunity for everyone on this island to have a quality job. And that definition may range, right? And so how do we develop jobs with economic stability, economic mobility, and that equity, respect, and I like Deb mentioned voice, that her employees get to come in and they get to comment like, what is this cash register system you got going, Deb, or whatever it is? And they are respected and included in workplace decision-making. So I wanted to share that just so you could see some of the things that we're looking at as we contemplate and try to build this with our team. And then finally, the last slide is just back to my 3 points, Patrick, which were, oh, that's the old one. That's fine. It doesn't matter. It was yeah. Yep. That's it. So I didn't talk specifically about all the programs or policy areas that we've delved into, but I hope it gives you a flavor of what we're doing. And I felt like there's some resonance with not all, but some of the things you all brought up in our initial discussion at this meeting. So thanks for your patience as I work through it.
So first off, any questions or maybe just questions about what you presented?
Question about data. It seems like a lot of the analysis that you folks have done, like for example, in identifying where is inequity, like how's the data collection process for those kind of things and analysis? Same thing with like identifying priority industries, like how do you have data that shows creative industries actually creates good jobs, for example, for construction industry?
So we just hired our data strategist. And so whatever data we have collected in terms of understanding from that perspective where our work should be is a part of some of the handouts or the links that I shared because they informed our work thus far. And they will be a building block for how we gather data going forward. But we have the one main study with UHERO that we've conducted ourselves. And other than that, I would say on a monthly basis, the county offices of economic development meet regularly with DBET and Dr. Tian. So we ask questions, he brings back the answers the next time. And what we've discovered is we're really not on the same page exactly in what we want to measure with either of those organizations. And thus we need to build out this work. So we're doing everything from developing our own cybersecurity and data security policies in our office to our data strategist, starting internally, and next we'll send her externally. Hawaii Data Collaborative has been a huge support to us in starting to figure this out. So we're just beginning to build our strategy and don't have much so far.
I was just curious because I mean the working definition, I guess you guys have a good job. Just looking at the different metrics that you have there, I don't think a lot of that data even exists,
Mhm.
right? Okay, just wanted to make sure I was on the same page there.
Yeah,
We are,
yeah.
and that's part of our frustration. We have more questions than data points.
I have a question. You said you reached out to 3,000 small businesses.
Mhm.
What types of businesses were they? Were they, storefront, office type things? Really small business? You had a lot of people affected by the pandemic that were sort of independent contractors. They had their wedding businesses affected, and photographers and that kind of thing. So I'm kind of curious. So what exactly, or do you have like the data on the types of businesses that were reached out to?
Absolutely.
So we have all of that. This is a part of Kim's purview, and we just got our CRM contract
Sign.
signed.
We're
So we're-
training this week.
Yeah, so we're gonna have a database. Our business and constituent educators will finally have a tablet when they go out and do this work. Right now, they enter all the information into Google Sheets, which isn't the worst, but it's the way that we've kept track of that. And that monthly update that we provide to the council, Deb, I think you may have seen it once, shows the numbers in the different areas for the in-person outreach that we do, which, as you mentioned, is mostly storefront businesses in terms of the walking outreach, but our webinars, our newsletter, and any kind of meetings that we conduct are also for, home-based and other small businesses, which was the focus of the Oahu Business Recovery Grants, to try to provide some relief to those businesses who were previously excluded from any kind of pandemic relief. So we can share with you, where all those 3,000 businesses.
What the sectors were, I don't know that you want like locations. I think the other thing that we're recognizing and having this conversation around equity is, how do we get to those that don't have a storefront, right? We're not gonna go knock on somebody's front door and say, hey, by the way, I'm from the city, I want to talk to you about your business. And so we are in our third week now of a pilot program in partnership with the Small Business Administration out at Kapolei Hale, where we have on Thursday all day, we have business hours. And so businesses can register and say, these are the kind of, questions I have, or these are the kind of resources I'm gonna need. And we work with the Small Business Administration to bring in those resources when those businesses are there. So this is another way that we're hoping to reach out in a non-traditional way. Yet sort of traditional because it is in person and in an office there at Kapolei Hale. But I think that's one of the things that we're excited about too, is just like, should we do things differently? How do we try something? And we're not your typical government entity, so we're able to do that. But yeah, we can definitely give you a breakdown of which business it is. What we're really interested in getting more granular data about is, how many employees do they have? I don't think any businesses are going to be like, I'll tell you exactly what my revenues are, how many taxes I pay. I don't think we're going to get to that. But just how many employees, right? So if we can get that, other than scraping from census data, which is really what we're relying on right now, which is what DBET also relies on right now, so.
Thank you. Another, just a comment in general for small businesses, part of it is, okay, just bringing in the dollars. And I think most entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs, they're excited, just bringing in, revenue. However, part of it is, as you get older and as they become have more responsibilities and on a personal level, and then you realize, living in Hawaii, the cost of living, and where do you want to send your kids to school, et cetera, is also you start to think of like, well, how do I keep the money? How do I have money for retirement?
Yeah.
Because they could be doing enough, but then for the small business owner themselves, aside from their employees, how do you, part of sustainable is, how do you keep the business going? How the climate, we offer a 401k plan, we do profit sharing, but we just started this. We've been in business for 28 years and we finally found someone to help us figure it out. But those types of resources for small businesses, getting them to think beyond, this day's, sales to, how do I stay in business? How do I retire? How do I have money to retire? Because, people talk about small business and entrepreneurship and it's all great, but a lot of times, the business owners are the ones not taking the paychecks if they're just trying to fund payroll on a slow week or a slow, pay period. There's things like that happening, and I think that should be also recognized, the challenges of business and aside from, the potential.
Yes, I
So
want to just say real quickly, so I witnessed that in my own household. But number two, the experience that we had in 2020 was that the city spent $173 million to attempt to support small businesses. And it was, small business, it was as defined by the SBA. And they had to provide invoices to basically get reimbursement for losses due to COVID or rent and staff salaries. And what the credit union saw was a bunch of small businesses walking in with their receipts and shoe boxes. And so that was a really good indication to us that these businesses were operating on a shoestring and less than even month to month, maybe. So we knew we had our work cut out for us, and I'll hand it to Kim.
And there's two areas that we're really excited about too, bringing tools into our community. One is just a small business startup accelerator support. So we're hoping to get some money for that so that, you see these, and Melly's a great example of that, right? These cohorts that can help, launch bigger than where they are. But really, how do you start up so that you're not 28 years in going, okay, what do we do now, right?
Right.
So one program that we would love to see so that businesses can take, this time and kind of think through, you're the stock clerk, you're the custodian, you're the security guard, right? You don't have time to do that, but we want to be able to create something that can sustain and can help those startup businesses. Where some of that's going to be informed is the other tool that we're working on building that we hope to have deployed by the end of the calendar year is a resource network. So those cohorts that Amy was talking about, part of it is mapping out this entrepreneurial support organization and what that looks like in our community and where those gaps are. So where are those technical assistance providers? Where are those business advisors that can come in and tell you the importance of having 401k, ESOPs, of having life insurance on your partners, right? Whatever it is that maybe you just kind of overlook but could help. Where are some of the tax savings that you can get and CPAs? And we saw that during the pandemic with CPAs dropping nonprofits. And if we don't have nonprofits, the city doesn't have anybody to give money to do services to, right? And so how do we keep that going? So this resource network, we're really excited about to do exactly what you said. This is where I am in the stage of my business. This is what I need, or this, I don't even know what I don't know. And so let me just go watch a webinar, and really meet businesses where they are when they're there and have a place where they can ask questions, have some technical resource providers that are able to assist them. We'd love to bring in some outside money to then, help these technical providers focus on some of these equity issues as well. And it's not just the person that has a little bit of cash and can come pay, but those that are like, yeah, we have a great idea, but we have the city, we're going to support you, wherever that money comes from, the EDA or something like that, or our own general funds, we'll see. But we are looking in that regard, Deb, because we hear you. We saw it during COVID. I think there's lots of businesses that go out in blue skies, right? So how do we help you make it not so hard?
Right.
Any other questions for Amy about who we are?
I have one question on political will. And so from my vantage point, Amy, like the first round on the rent relief, what is it, 12 organizations? I know there were some challenges. Planet Money had this scathing podcast national, like this was a disastrous model to go out to community, but you guys stuck with it. You kept the money in community. And so like, I was really impressed with that. So was that something like?
I didn't read the article, so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a podcast. It was about like how this rent relief program does not work through community partners. Like the money's not going out. It's too slow. I can send you the link, but it was really, and it was at that time that you stuck with the model.
Mhm.
And so it's just a question of political wills, because you mentioned community up there, and so I saw that as maybe it's more of a comment that it's for real. Like, I think if there's a mindfulness about getting the money into community, because that has built tremendous capacity.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
absolutely. I mean, it's not like we don't fight in here about that.
right.
Yeah.
Because it would have been easy to just like get one of the big six accounting firms or whatever it is, like take that work and run with it, but you didn't. So,
We did not. There were attempts to do that. So, I mean, in terms of political will, I feel like we've had very good support from the mayor, strong support from the mayor to do our work and to make it up, to be innovative. So sometimes I think on the innovation side, that's not a strength of government that I've ever witnessed. And I've worked on the federal, state, and now city government for 2 years now. And, but I think we've made some steps into that area by saying like, we're going to try this with the ag grants, or can we have a room out of Kapolei Hale? We want to try this thing. Nobody says no, so we just keep.
Just keep going.
Yeah,
The next step is don't ask.
yeah. Well, there's
Just go use the room.
It manages the room. Yeah.
Well, I think the business constituent educators, the call center are the good example of we're listening to the community and then developing programs instead of just sitting, in our nice glass offices looking down going, I think this is what they need. Is really, and that's why we're excited about this commission as well is, what are you guys hearing out there that we as the city can help with, and what partners can we bring, whether it's state, whether it's EDA money, whether it's philanthropic money that we can bring in to help our businesses as well.
Actually, again, quick question on that 3,000 businesses. To what extent was language a problem?
Quite a bit. They do ask, if we could come back with a translator, would you like that? Most people are no, they don't. But you're absolutely right. That's something that we track as well, is English is not necessarily the first language. It's something that we're struggling with. As Amy said, we tried to use city money to hire translators, and there's a little bit of a risk aversion there. So we're working around that. We do have our introductory brochures translated into 7
It's
different
not like
languages.
even if you get two native English speakers, that they always understand each other. I
True.
mean, we could talk and in an hour we'll have a
This is very true.
miscommunication,
Yeah.
so it's
Right,
This is very true.
not a new risk.
but at
If you
the
talk
same
to someone,
time,
you're gonna be misunderstood.
yeah, to have had one of our technical assistance providers who spoke fluent Mandarin bring in a restaurant owner who only spoke Mandarin. At the time, that business and constituent educator spoke a couple Chinese languages, Cantonese and Mandarin. So she brought the person in, and the technical assistance provider through the SBA help her do the restaurant revitalization fund application, and she got $40,000. We're like, never would have happened without multiple layers of support. She was clear, the restaurant, I would never have applied if you guys hadn't like helped me, sort of made me do it. Not that we made her do it, right? But it was an opportunity that she couldn't have figured out how to take advantage of herself. So we have like little and big lessons all the time.
I think language can get in the way though, because our law clinic was helping people at KPK. We, went there, we had meetings with, and there's a group of Micronesian women, and it just took a lot longer. And I'm not sure we quite could really, we tried our best, basically. And then another experience I had was helping Native Books and Beautiful Things. 20 vendors own an LLC, and that was just crazy, you know, and it wasn't, the discussions weren't about, you know, typical things that we would hear. You know, like we had an arbitration clause and they argued over that. Is that the way to resolve our differences? And they wanted to use Ho'oponopono, one guy, and then the other group was like, okay, well, how does the arbitration work? So they had different ideas with that. So culture and language. But I think that this is a real opportunity because you guys are way more action oriented than any federal group I've seen, you know. So that's another plus. Number two, you're pretty young. You told me a lot that you haven't devised these things, which is great. It's great to, like when you get a startup, do a startup, VCs like it if you haven't formed because you haven't screwed up anything yet. So I mean, you know, having a blank slate, I mean,
I think that's one of the good things.
being early is not necessarily a bad thing, right? So I have a lot of questions, but my reaction to your presentation and reading it earlier is like, wow, that's a lot. It's a hell of a lot. And so,
Some people say it's too much.
yeah, well, I don't know, but
So,
my reaction is just like, well, what's the focus, you know? Because in the startup world and the VC world and the business world, we try to think about that. So I don't know what the focus is. Maybe it's jobs, but maybe it's just simply helping people, you know, any way we can, right? I mean, but I just wondering, when you get up in the morning, you know, because Guy Kawasaki talks a lot about mantra. Do you know who that is? He's a Ilani guy, was the chief evangelist of Apple, did a pretty good job, did garage.com, Ilani boy. So anyway, he doesn't believe in plans. He believes in mantras. Every day you get up and you say, this is what I do today. American Red Cross, we save lives. We're going to save lives today, right? And so I'm just wondering, every organization should have a mantra, even big ones, but certainly startup operations. So, and I don't know if there's an answer to this question, but the one I would have for you is when you get up every morning, what do you say you do? Of all that forest, the trees, what is the forest? What gets you going? You know, like what does it make it? What makes life worthwhile being in this job? You know, and maybe different people have different answers, but that's what I would ask myself every day. It's like, why am I doing this? You know, and what am I going to do today? Save a life, create a job, help a person, you know. Do you have any feeling about that?
Good question.
Hopefully it's not just I get up and I'm going to make a paycheck today, right?
Yeah. I think the wonderful thing about starting up an organization is we've got to pick who we hire from day one. And so that has helped us to have a diverse group of people and folks who are mission oriented. Because generally working for the city, you're going to make a little bit less, especially than some of these very talented people we've ensnared. But for me, I did grow up in a church, so you know, some of my thinking comes from there about what do I have to offer in each day, and I think it's a saying from something that we used to sing at church, but was, "Thank you for this glorious day. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." And that's my first, and then I think it's the serenity prayer,
Mhm.
because I feel like we face a lot of challenges that there's things that we can't do something about, but I want to have the serenity and the professionalism to do those things that I can, that are within my control. And then the other one is a Walt Whitman quote. And those are I don't call them mantras, it's my prayers
Yeah.
before.
Well, it
And
shows, I think.
Think of
in
some
you.
people that I want to be well in the world.
One thing I forgot to mention, I have more questions, but the one thing I wanted to mention was when we spoke is one thing we could do is support you in your failures because it's about failing. I know that doesn't sound normal in a city context, but really what you've started and trying stuff means some's not going to work. And I know that there may be pushback, but I think we can help support them, go to council meetings, testify, hey, we got to try this stuff. Because they told us in the hearing, just go big, go for it. We're going for it. don't stop us, and give support to what they're trying to do, because we're the so-called, I guess, experts in these kind of things, ventures and things like that. So I just think that I would just encourage you to go for stuff, and some will work, some won't, but the ones that don't work, you learn from, dust yourself off, move on. But that's more of an entrepreneurial approach, which is very unusual for government, but that's the opportunity, I believe.
I jump off of something you shared.
Yeah.
Great. As a sort of a place where I want to let us have a little bit more of a discussion before we start closing out. That is, so at the end of this process, this year, the idea is to come up with some kind of plan, and I know that there's all kinds of room to play with what that means. But one of the things for sure is that OER, this entity, is going to, work off of that advice of this group. And so you started talking about sort of as a startup and such. To me, like what's really interesting about OER is that it emerged out of the pandemic, which makes it really different from a lot of other government economic development entities that, are sort of, everybody makes one and it does stuff. But this one emerged out of the pandemic to distribute relief. And so it does stuff that I think some people standing back would say, this is weird. This is a weird looking economic development entity, right? Because of what it's been doing. But that gives it certain kinds of capacity, like you're talking about, certain kinds of experience. So it's a kind of a different new animal. So what I wanted to do was to have, so since that's like sort of the end product of where we're going. And again, I'd love it if everybody sort of shares what you're thinking. It's just kind of where Greg was going, which is having heard this, what's your takeaways with what OER is? Like what's sort of stuck with you from the presentation and some of the answers to the questions about this entity? I'd love to hear from everybody.
Thank you. Great.
I mean,
Oh, thanks.
And we're allowed to eat in here. I already started eating, but.
Oh, no, we're not.
The winning commissioner is the one who eats
Okay.
their whole bottle.
We're behind.
Holy wait.
We share wins.
What are your takeaways?
Is your question, what is it, or is it more aspirational, like what ought it be?
My question is, what's sticking with you about this thing OER? That seems like whatever's sticking with you, there's no rule. Go ahead.
I like how the strategies were kind of identified. And I think that's kind of cool. Like you guys look for momentum and just kind of lean into it and like provide, I think like you said, you kind of like provide that government shoulder. And so I think that's kind of cool. One of the things that I'm wondering is in terms of like identifying community need, like as part of the good job strategy, like how does the strategy identify community need and identify jobs that are filling that need? And then pushing for those jobs to become good jobs if they're not good jobs already. And as somebody who runs a nonprofit now, I feel like I'm compelled to say like the nonprofit sector is a good example of that, where a lot of nonprofit jobs that are so necessary and provide so many community services have historically been jobs that many would not consider good jobs, at least on the economic side of it. And then compared to other sectors. And so like if we recognize that there's a need in the community and those are the types of jobs that are filling that need, how do we work to make those jobs better jobs? Just a wondering. Awesome, thank you. You want me to popcorn somebody?
Sure.
I'll go.
Okay, no,
I kind of, I liked what Keone said on jobs, and I think as Amy was talking and thinking about a lot that was said, although I have no data, but every business owner I talk to, their biggest complaint is they don't have enough people. And when I go through our communities, the biggest thing I see is people are either unemployed or underemployed or don't have a good enough job. it seems like you could solve that, right? You got all these business people who need to hire, including the city. And all these people who can't make enough to make ends meet. It's like, could we like match make or help people? There's obviously a gap and maybe we can help people get there or one way or the other. But if we do help our thinnest margin people get a better job, it'll raise the bottom. Should probably raise everybody.
To this thing that both of you guys have raised in terms of either making that match or sort of being connected to the community. Based on what you heard about OER, do you get a sense that OER can play a role in that? Or
It fits the mission.
others?
Well, since we're throwing out just big ideas, I think everything they thought is completely accurate. I see that too. Everyone says they don't have enough staff. But then we have people leaving Hawaii in droves. So I think one of the things that, or a couple things, childcare is an issue. A lot of people are underemployed or not employed because they can't work. Because they have to take care of the kids. And so there's one. And then the other one is housing. A lot of people that could have these good jobs can afford monthly rent, but they can't afford a deposit to get into a new place or to get into a safer place. I don't know where they're living. But, you know, I think if there's some way that we can help with, I don't know, help with a no interest loan to businesses that business owners could help with their employees. So that their employees can cover that deposit and first month's rent or something like that. Or if they can help with childcare and help sponsor some of the childcare costs, or, you know, I'm just thinking big. I know all of this is very convoluted, and there's a lot of things to work out, but I think those are two barriers that I see a lot is childcare and housing. And that's part of the reason we have some of the workforce shortage issues.
So same question to you. Given those problems and hearing about OER, can you articulate some kind of like a role that an entity like OER could play?
Yeah, I mean, I think OER has done a fantastic job with all these grants. So I don't know if the housing kind of grant or loan program is something that they would consider. You know, childcare is definitely a little bit more complicated, but you know, I like everyone's been saying, they're doing all these amazing things that you wouldn't think government should do. So why not? I think OER is the best place to start, really.
Yeah, sort of finding these issues and obviously sort of having some proven track record of the distribution of funds, sort of. Okay. Thank you.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm a little confused.
Awesome.
Not because I don't understand what OER does, but I think because it was born out of the pandemic, a lot of the focus, which I see common themes around helping small businesses, you know, getting equity education out in the community, you know, access to funds, all these things were pandemic driven. That doesn't mean that it's not important for us going forward. But I think if we are talking about how this office helps communities or individuals or families in the future, it needs to be something that gets molded with its pandemic roots, but something that's more sustainable outside of that. And then I kept going back to the good job thing. And I guess this is where I'm a little confused. So I started thinking after I read my definition again, I started thinking, I have a cousin who lives in Colorado, and she goes between Colorado and Seattle, and she jumps back and forth with her and her boyfriend. And she doesn't have a traditional job. She's a gig worker. She works freelance, right? So all of her stuff is done online, which allows her to be mobile, to go back and forth. Her boyfriend's the same, right? And to her, that's a great job. It doesn't allow her to stay in one place. It allows her to go on vacation and still be working technically. They're going to get married soon and they're 23 years old, right? And because they're financially okay at that age. So talking to her, that's a great job, right? So maybe the definition of what a good job is changing. And you think about the small businesses that we helped both on the federal government side and on the city side during the pandemic. And a lot of the jobs they were trying to replace, or a lot of the payroll workers they were trying to keep, were these low-level like types of workers. I look at the bank, for example. We can't hire for basic teller positions anymore. We can't hire for basic processor positions anymore, not because there aren't candidates out there, because nobody wants the job, right? And so maybe the definition of a good job is changing. Maybe we need to look at that definition from a new lens, because I think generationally, there is a generation below us that doesn't think that that type of job is a good job anymore, right? Even though we may think it's a good job because it can provide a living, it gives them retirement benefits, it gives them healthcare, right? Allows them to maybe even start a family here. So maybe there's something that we need to talk about that we're missing here, because we're all of a certain age demographic and we might be missing it for the next 5 years, right? Is what we're thinking about for a strategic plan. Sorry. hope that-
There's one exception to what you said. I wonder if people don't want the jobs, or if there's qualifications in prep and they're not prepared for it.
That
So
prevents it.
we just have no one showing up.
Mhm.
Because you can't just
You're right.
go from living in a tent to being a bank teller, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's stuff that has to happen first. And I don't know if we've invested in that infrastructure to get people prepared.
I appreciate the confusion. Like, I mean, because I was actually hoping, isn't anybody confused here? Because like, so that's face value. It is kind of a really unusual thing in the pandemic. One of the questions I have is to think about is like what emerging out of the pandemic means for this entity and economic development, because it's not, that it's important. It's part of the context. So I'm gonna try to answer that just based on like our work. I think, because all this conversation about good jobs. So one view is that a good job is subjective. So it's come from the position of you, and it could be all kinds of things. And we've shared so many stories about all kinds of things. And I think one of the interesting things happening at OER is just to consider that might be important too. So besides just like so there's the other perspective, what we deem as good jobs based on the industries we want to create. I read your treatise, the industries we want to create. And so we can look at it from that side, but if we look at it from this side too, it adds like another layer of what kind of economic development we want to create. And it actually might change the kinds of investments we make to which industries. That's clever, I think, and that's it's very human-centered in that sense. Again, different entrepreneurial from a government standpoint too, I think. But still, like, there's still questions. I think, like, how does this fully come out? Because I think some people have looked at OER and said, "Wow, it's almost like a community service office more than economic development. It's giving out aid and such." So we're in that middle space. I don't think there is anything to compare it to.
Yeah, I think that my reaction to your question is from COVID, it's made you who you are, which means you're not afraid. You take chances, and you probably did a lot of things that were never done before that had risks in them. So that's kind of in your DNA, and you're helping people one at a time. And I think that as I think about a mantra that I would, for OER, what does it do? Is it's going to help people. It helps people find a job. If you're unemployed or you want to do a job, come here. We'll help you. It helps businesses find employees. If you need, come here. We have programs. We're going to match you up or whatever it may, train people that we help people, whether they be business people or employee people. But I feel like that's kind of core to what OER has been. And we shouldn't let go of that, because I think that's kind of unique. Not that government doesn't help people, but one at a time, even those people on the street. I mean, that's cool. I mean, that's something that could really make a difference over time, right? Versus doing these macro things. Because I think we have to decide, do we go macro or micro? I mean, we could try to do everything, but do we like try to create a new sector or support our sector to grow that? Or do we create programs that help individuals or groups of people to succeed?
Right.
So I think the latter seems to fit more. what OER is all about. You can do the other things too. You just don't necessarily advertise it that that's what you are. When we started our first law firm out of Goodsell, you remember Vantage Counsel, we were small, so we had to decide, well, we're not a full service law firm. So we did a lot of thinking and strategizing and said, well, we're company builders. That's what we do. We build companies. Yes, we did the other things that corporate lawyers do, but we couldn't be everything to everybody. And so if you're like a new organization and you're trying to tell people what you do, what you get out of bed, and you think, oh, what is it you do? I think that having a central kind of goal or mission is really important, and it's maybe helping people, you know. So
How about the others, Deb or Olin? Sort of your sort of takeaways about OER. What we've
Yeah, I guess I'll go. To me, revitalization means thriving. And, you know, we're not thriving. Like if you guys walk to Long's today, every third person you meet is considered like Alice. You know, every 10th person you meet is living beyond, like under the poverty line. Every 2.5 people would be working for government. Yeah. So, yeah, so I think that part there and all this funding that's come out of the pandemic is not going to be sustainable. We're not going to get that. I think, Amy, you mentioned the last bid is going out now. And so that may not be a bad thing because that kind of forces us. So the way that I see OER is really like, if I take the city analogy, I think it's like we're filling the potholes, but it's we who are doing it. And then in doing that, we're also looking like, wow, like, can I convert this lamppost to an EV charger? Or we're starting like looking at other kinds of things. So I see the potential of us needing to figure out what we have to work with, like outside of this external funding that's coming in. You know, there's like, you know, in my company, we hire Native Hawaiian contractors. And so like that helps meet our mission. And that changes the life of these folks that we, you know, contract. And it's just, it doesn't cost us. It's just like a choice that we're making when we're in these communities, we're hiring people from the community. And so I think that's where I see OER going, is that we've got a set of tools and resources that we're going to have to live with. And I think we can do better in terms of thriving to make some really bold choices. And so like I read some of these studies here that you have listed here, and some of the data points are really shocking. Like, you know, the gap between an owner occupied home and an investor owned home is $450,000. Like, wow, that's a lot of money in any part of the country. And so there's a lot of these policy thoughts. So I do think that given the short amount of time, we've got to focus in on a few things. It sounds like we probably have to break up into some groups and really dive into some of the wisdom that was laid before us and really put a few things out there. And so I see that with OER. I would love to work with what we got, because we got a lot. And I know how to fix
I'd
it.
like to.
Go ahead, Dan.
I'd like to comment a little. I mean, even the graphics that you put forward, I'm a visual person, and it shows like positivity and potential. And, you know, there's some out of the pandemic, there's some good things that have arose, and it actually, I think, exposed some people's the cracks in government, you know, and so, you know, the good thing is it's, you know, this type of I guess the commission has arose from the pandemic. The one thing I do want to, I mean, and then here's the reality, you know, as the aging population continues, something like, I think Paul Brubaker said something like in 2032, right? You know, the tipping point of the age of the aging population in Hawaii is going to be over the age of 65. And if our younger people are leaving, and then we have all these service industries, you're right, we can't get employees. You just can't, you know, you can't fill your staff. And it's an interesting dynamic, I think. And there's a lot of opportunities, but I think we should look at all the realities, you know, because it's really great to think of new ideas, but then what is the reality? So, you know, what is the general population? What is the cost of living? I mean, you know, we talk about good jobs and living wage and everything like that, but why is, you know, have we looked at what is causing the cost of living to be always be so high in Hawaii. And I don't know, there's things, you hear things about the Jones Act and some of these other obscure things that you're like, oh, there's these underlying things that making everything cost more. And so therefore, the jobs are one thing, but, among all economic levels, the general cost of living, like what is driving that cost so much higher all the time? And I think that's something to explore because they go hand in hand.
Thank you. And Melly, I hope you can hear us now. But your thoughts, takeaways.
It's really good to see all this data and hear what people are talking about, and I loved your example, right? It looks like a very easy to fix thing, like people need jobs and we need to hire people. I think it just also highlights how wicked of a problem it is, how unpredictable and how little control we can actually exercise over it with direct interventions. And I think that's the thing we need to understand first, from setting a baseline of shared understanding and context, like what Deb is talking about. Why are we in this situation? What is the situation that we're in? Because if some of us think that Hawaii needs some incremental improvements in our economy, and some of us think it's a dumpster fire right now that needs a complete overhaul, then we're gonna have two different conversations at each other. And so, there's a role for the commission perhaps in that we can set some baseline, shared understanding, shared context. Heck, even some agreements on what does more diversity mean? What does more equitable mean? What are the conditions of this more ideal future economy that we want to work towards, right? So that then we have shared purpose and shared vision as we work through this. But when it comes to OER and the role of government, right? Role of government should be as the watchdog and the caretaker of everyone, right? We can just look to Washington, DC as the example of what we don't want it to be, right? Where it serves corporate interest, right? Under the guise of serving people, and that it's a representative democracy. I think we can, really challenge that's not the case anymore, right? And so how does government, if the role of government is to look out for everyone, and use the example of a rising tide lifts all ships, right? So I see the government that rising tide. How do we create the rules? How do we create the enforcement? How do we create the algorithm that I was talking about earlier for the kind of future economy that we want to have? And that would be the task of OER, is to the policies, the frameworks, the enforcement, right? Because I agree, like, I'm super liberal in my beliefs, but I think we have too much government. And if we have surplus and we're not spending it on excessive government, we can actually invest in our communities. We can invest in new entrepreneurs. We can invest in all these other things. But right now, a lot of the money that we get as a government goes to pay for government. It's a it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so look at, really rethinking what the role is for OER. And I love the fact that it was born out of crisis, right? It was triage. It was really facing the problems and the vulnerabilities of our economy and our society, right? And so you got really good data. You got a really good insight into what that is. Now, coming out of triage, right? What does prevention and healing look like instead of just triage? And
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Now we can.
Oh my God. Okay, sorry.
Hi, Melly.
Hi. Oh my God. I was talking so much. Okay, anyway. Go ahead, Candy. I'm not trying to interrupt you. I do have some thoughts, but when you're done, I just want to.
Yeah.
Trying
No,
to
I just, we can't control. If we think that we can change our economy by thinking on short-term timescales with like magic bullet interventions, it's just not gonna happen. That's not how systems change works. Right?
Okay, Melly.
Okay. Okay. Hello. Hi, everybody. So, I agree with a lot of what I've heard, but I also think about, how are we supporting, how are we growing the pie? And I'm on kind of a big thing around how are we supporting companies that have gotten a little bit farther along, right? They have hit over those initial hurdles. And maybe I'm repeating what others have said. But I really think we have a real deprivation of like resources, and how do we help businesses thrive here so we can create those jobs? um I understand startup formation is very important, and we do have that, and there's always going to be companies starting. We need to support that, but I really don't feel like we've had strong resources to support companies that are a little bit farther along and helping them where they're at that sweet spot of hiring and revenue, where it's actually kind of the whole point. And if we're able to grow those things and create a smooth pathway for businesses to thrive, then that starts to grow our tax base, of course, and then these interesting jobs, God forbid, having interesting jobs in addition to higher paying ones, that can support our community and get people to be more interested in being here. So again, I'm not sure if anyone said this already, but I'm a big believer that OER, and one of our roles is to grow the pie. And how do we support companies that are at 100, 500,000, 1 million in revenue, and getting them to 10 plus? Because I just feel like there's a big drop off a lot of times after the startup formation. And then a lot of times people just keep seeing business as big bad business, big bad corporate, where there's actually a lot of small business, medium-sized business, locally owned business. And we have to see business for good, right? How are we seeing business for good so that we can create those pathways and grow the pie? I mean, I don't know. So that's what I'm going to say, but I'm probably repeating somebody, but hopefully that's somewhat additive.
Thank you. I'm glad you got on. Thank you. Okay, I want to land the plane by 6:30, so any other final comments about who we are, what we're dealing with? Because I want to then riff off some of the things that were said as we land this plane, which is, where do we go next?
My only thing is,
Yeah.
OER is driven by the people who currently sit in this office.
Mhm.
And an administration that supports that. That's it.
Mhm.
They leave, it's done. Potentially. How do you make it last?
Good question. Okay, so where we're going next is we want to try and come to a, like Olin, you brought up some of the stuff that you read in this. We want to try to see if we can arrive at a common understanding of reality. Okay, of like what is happening and what does it mean. So these 9 items were both by Kim and Amy, because there are things that OER has been building its work around. Not because they're the be all end all or anything, but these are things that they have referenced as they have built up sort of their practice in the office. So what we wanted to do was, you guys all come in here, so we want to make sure everybody got to read everything. Okay, like you have like 2 months to read everything.
So they're all linked in the agenda,
They're all linked in the agenda.
right?
Okay.
And if you go to our website, it will take you to all of these.
And again, this is not the be all end all. And I think there will be things that you all will want to bring in as well. And that's great. So part of the homework is to read these things, but also if there are additional bits of information, analyses, data, whatever that you think this body needs, bring it. But what we want to do for these 9, just to make sure that we get things done, is to ask for volunteers. There's 9 of you, to choose one and to come back. It's kind of like a book report. Come back with your 3, 4, 5, whatever like main takeaways, like Olin already gave you one, it's like that was the one that he read out of one of his reports,
I
right?
can tell you guys which one is the smallest. Some of them are really meaty.
That's how I used to do book reports.
I was gonna say.
You want to
Yeah.
Yes, make sure there's a picture book. So one of them might be, actually.
Yeah, one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, that's cheating.
What is
It's
that?
actually my.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So before
Probably
that,
should.
what I wanted to do is, if you wrote one of these, which some of you did, or were a big part in the generation one of those, can you take that one? Because that would be, that would make the most sense. So I know for you, I know Aloha Economic Futures, Kim had a big part in making that. So if you can take that one, are there any others that any of you here, like, were part of writing? Okay, if not, I'm just gonna go down this list, okay? Who wants to do the Oahu Seds? It's a crackling read. I did it.
Sounds long.
It's long, but it's good.
It's good.
It's really good.
I'll do it.
Awesome, thank you. The state Seds. Similarly good.
I can do that one. This is Melly.
Right on. Thank you, Melly. The Aspen Institute's good job framework.
I'll do aspects.
Thank you. Aloha is Keone, the Alice report.
That one's just like infographics. It's like-
Really? Well, let's just- I mean, he's making it easy.
It may be helpful to go back to the original one. We only linked with the update for 2022, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest you
28.
reference some of the things that it's referenced in there too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody want to take the Alice report?
Do you want to do that, Owen, and reference the
sure.
reference links?
I think so.
Olin's got that one. The Tourism Authority Destination Management Plan.
I'll take that.
Okay. And then these three studies. One is the local food study,
What is that?
Olu, COVID business impact study. Only got Deb.
I'll do anything, whatever you
I
want
can
to
do
give.
it, yeah, I can do whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me.
I can do that one.
Okay, you do the, Deb, you do the COVID business impact 2021. You do
Okay.
that study. And so, again,
I do the housing? Is that
Yeah,
it? Okay.
just, it's a body of UHERO housing work, but we've worked with Phil Garbiden on
Okay.
our rental relief program, so it's large. And then Deb, yours is not so large because it was, again, that study I mentioned that we did with UHERO. It's dated to 2021, but I wanted to,
Okay.
yeah,
so not asking for a PowerPoint, nothing, please don't.
yeah.
Let's agree, no
Yeah,
PowerPoint.
3, 4
Talk.
takeaways, like things that seems important that all of us know. And then as we'll have a discussion at this next point, because what we want to try and figure out is a collective understanding of what do we think is going on? Okay, what are the things that we need to put forward as like, these are the factors, these are the themes, these are the forces or the trends or whatever that gotta be on our radar as we try to achieve these goals. In the process, my hope is that we'll get closer and closer to really being on the same page. And if it turns out that we have divergent views or whatever, that's fine too, we'll deal with that, okay? But let's start from a common point of facts.
But we all read all of them anyway, right?
But you all read all of them anyway, which I know you will. You're just like that.
Just like that.
Any questions about that? Any questions about that? Okay, cool. Other business, Amy.
Okay, so one of the things we didn't wrap up to any satisfactory resolution was how we're gonna manage our rules. And I did feel some notion that you guys felt, as Dwayne Peng, the corporate counsel who was here, suggested that maybe you need to get an idea of who each other is and what the work should be before you set in place rules, vote on, amend, et cetera, rules. So in that, the part of the rules was that there is a chair and a vice chair, which since I work in the office, I don't want to have any kind of undue, like, I would rather have a commission member if someone was willing to step
I'm
up.
okay if you're the chair.
You don't feel
That is sure, that's possible. If we could agree maybe at the end of the year that we would try to, or take that out of the rules too. I don't know. Thoughts on
Does
that?
anyone want to be chair? I don't.
When I was a kid, if you were the fifth caller, like you would win something. So, yeah, anyway.
Who was the fifth person that walked in the room?
But actually, if, as commissioners, if none of us are the chair, then we're all on equal footing in terms of a discourse. It's not like, oh, I'm the chair. So, and
Yeah.
you're in charge of these things if you want to chair it.
And what do our rules need to be now versus in the future? Right? You know, a startup governing board is different than a mature governing. So maybe we can start up
Okay.
rules.
Well, I mean, do you guys need, I know like the chair normally takes on certain responsibilities to help you folks out. Do you guys need that help?
Just like, I've been doing a lot of work,
Yeah.
but it
Don't make
can,
eye contact.
can.
First rule of meeting, don't make eye.
We're still talking about the chair.
Well, I don't think it's a bad idea to have a chair. I'm not volunteering to be the chair. I just want to say that it's probably better for you folks not to be the chairs. It just looks better and process-wise and the chair, for the right chair, they're not going to dominate, but they just run the meetings basically and make sure it finishes on time and sets the agenda with the team, right? So I would say that whoever wants to be the chair, it's not that big a job. But it's important, I think, because otherwise because you're supposed to take advice from us, right?
Yeah,
Versus you're
that's
running
what I
us.
don't want to have.
Yeah, it's
undue-
a little better if it's
kind
not
of-
setting the agenda. Maybe people can contact you after the meeting if they're interested, because they may not want to speak up here.
I think we have to vote though. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, we have to vote on it.
you're going to vote against anybody who volunteers? Everyone take one step back.
Okay.
Sounds like.
3 people have said no, but Reed hasn't said no.
That sounds like a yeah.
No, I honestly.
he'd be excellent.
I just heard he has a 7-month-old.
He has a 3-month-old, he wins.
Well, who's
Someone
efficient then?
Chair and vice chair.
Yeah, I guess that'd be good.
Two guys that have sleep deprivation. Reed, look at it this way, you'd be like, oh, I gotta chair this meeting. I would stay, but I gotta go chair a meeting. I'm the chair.
There's Deb or Melly that haven't said no.
Well, no, I'm gonna pass. Not now.
Yeah, I have to pass as well. I apologize.
So we could limit it to sharing the agenda, approving what we have, making any edits, and then just conducting the meeting. That's basically the ask at this point.
I'll do it with someone, but we junk in a poll for who's chair and vice chair.
Winner gets to be chair.
Winner gets to choose.
Yeah, so there's sides. It's like a coin flip.
Because I agree with you, Greg. I think we do need a chair, like
Yeah.
this from a public perspective, maybe even connecting with the public. So that would
I
be.
mean, there may be things that the chair wants to add to the agenda that isn't necessarily coming from the department, right? So.
So I'll put it out there if anybody wants to junk in a poll with me.
I think anybody's welcome to add to the agenda too. Sorry, I'm not trying to speak for Amy, but I know I would be amenable to whatever it is you guys want. That's what we're here to facilitate.
Anybody gonna jump in? I think junk info is part of Robert's rules.
It's actually.
Vice chair.
But it's the junk in a poll. Or I mean, I even have a 267-month-old, so. I'm still only- Yeah, so I should be inspiring, right, you guys, to jump in here.
The math that was done.
Okay, is it the winner or the loser?
You want to do it?
I'll do it.
Okay, we'll do it.
So does everyone agree Olin and Eliza are chair and vice chair, whatever form that takes? Okay, Olin's chair. Yeah. Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Someone make the motion.
Aye.
And we need at least
Discussion, any
50% based on
discussion?
our draft rules.
Aye.
I agree.
Aye. Aye. This is Melanie.
How old is yours?
All right,
How many weeks is that?
that was my other business.
Thanks for volunteering.
Yeah.
You guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
But it's only for 1 year, so.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
The lawyer.
Well, I'm not gonna bend the knee. Just let
You
it.
were looking away when I started looking your way too. I'm sure you guys are looking away, they don't want to share.
The way the bylaws read is you're in office until the successor is elected
Is named.
and accepts the position. So.
Well, the chair might have due influence to change the rules, so might participate in how they are edited.
Every agenda will be, we're electing a new chair this time.
You know, I guess this is a semi-related story, but Andrew, James and I ran Kanu, Hawaii. And at the end, we transitioned and then, we're like, wow, who's the ED? And it was Andrew all this time, but we had run it as such a flat organization, I forgot.
I forgot. I thought I was the ED.
Yeah.
So the only thing left on this agenda is adjournment, and I don't know, Chair, I think it's up to you to do this, your first official act.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, second?
Rhonda,
Chair.
congratulations.
Congratulations. We'll help
Everybody.
everybody. Don't worry.
Take your little
Under the plane before.
box of
6:30.
treats,
Yeah, let's put it
please.
working with you.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Take it for someone that.
Right. Oh,
All you guys, thank you
very
very
much.
much.
Thank you,
everybody.
SSBCI.
Thank
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for hanging in there, Melanie.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Like-